The massive doors of the America's Got Talent stage slid open with a soft metallic groan, and from the blinding backlight emerged two silhouettes, one tall, one small, their hands interlocked. At first, the audience saw only outlines, but as the pair stepped forward into the glowing spotlight, murmurs began to ripple through the theater. A father and son, both dressed in matching cream-colored barong-inspired shirts, embroidered with delicate gold thread, garments that spoke quietly of their Filipino heritage. The simplicity of their outfits set them apart in a world of sequined costumes and dramatic attire. There was something disarming about their presence. No theatrics, no flash, only sincerity. The father, probably in his late 30s or early 40s, held himself with a mixture of pride and nervousness. His eyes scanned the vast audience, struggling to hide the awe on his face. He squeezed his son's hand gently, whispering something only the child could hear. The boy, maybe 10 or 11 years old, clutched his father's hand tighter, his eyes wide, glistening with equal parts fear and excitement. They stopped at center stage, just a few feet away from the judges' panel where Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel watched them with polite curiosity. Simon leaned forward slightly, tilting his head, studying the duo like a puzzle he couldn't yet solve. He wasn't smiling. Simon rarely smiled before a performance, but his eyes reflected interest. He could sense when something unexpected was about to happen, and something about this father-son pair hinted at exactly that. Sophia was the first to react with a warm smile. "Ah, they look adorable," she whispered to Heidi, nudging her elbow playfully. The father cleared his throat, visibly trying to calm the storm inside. His voice trembled just a little as he spoke into the microphone. "Hello, everyone. My name is Arvin, and this is my son, Marco," he said, pushing his son slightly forward. Marco gave a shy wave, cheeks flushing pink. The crowd responded with a collective awe, touched by the innocence radiating from the young boy. Simon cleared his throat. "So," he asked, "tell us where you're from." Arvin's answer came gently, but proudly. "We're from Manila, Philippines." The audience erupted in cheers. Loud, supportive, unexpected. Even the judges smiled wider. Filipinos around the world were known for their musical talent, for their passion, for their heart. Whenever a Filipino stepped onto a global stage, the excitement was unmistakable. Simon nodded. "Why AGT? Why come all the way here to audition?" Arvin inhaled deeply. "Well, for many years I've been singing at small events in Manila, weddings, birthdays, fiestas, and I always dreamed of performing on a big stage like this. But life, you know." He chuckled softly, shaking his head as if reliving the hardships. "Life takes you in different directions. And then, one day, I heard my son singing in the bathroom, and I thought, maybe our dream isn't over yet. Maybe we could try together." Marco looked up, eyes shining. "I wanted to sing with my papa," he added in a soft voice. The simplicity of those words echoed through the auditorium. Heidi placed her hand over her heart. "That is so sweet," she whispered, visibly moved. Even Simon's expression softened a little. Howie asked, "And what will you be performing today?" Arvin answered slowly, as if savoring the moment, "A song that means a lot to us. It helped us get through hard times and kept us close." Marco nodded beside him, gripping his dad's hand even tighter. The audience subtly leaned forward, sensing there was more beneath the surface. A story untold, a journey that had led them thousands of miles from Manila to this very spot under the spotlight. Simon straightened up, signaling the crew. "All right, we're ready when you are." The father nodded gratefully. "Thank you." As the stage darkened a bit, Arvin knelt down in front of Marco, gently brushing a stray hair from his son's forehead. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the tenderness of the moment, a moment that instantly hit millions of hearts watching from home. He whispered something again, something meant only for the boy. Marco nodded, inhaled deeply and clenched his little fists briefly before letting them relax. Arvin rose to his full height, squeezed his son's shoulder and gave a small, reassuring smile. Then the first notes of their chosen song floated through the room. The familiar melody echoed softly, almost hauntingly. Even before they began to sing, the atmosphere shifted. A sense of anticipation thickened in the air. The audience fell silent, phones lowered, breaths held. Backstage, crew members paused their tasks and turned toward the stage, curious. Even the host leaned closer to the monitor, sensing something special. On stage, the father and son exchanged one more look, one filled with love, trust, and unspoken promises. This was more than an audition. It was a shared dream, a bond strengthened through music, a moment they had imagined perhaps thousands of times. The boy's small chest rose and fell with his breath. Arvin lifted the microphone to his lips, and just before the first note left their mouths, Simon's eyes widened slightly. He felt it. The audience felt it. Everyone felt it. Something extraordinary was about to happen. The stage lights shifted again, highlighting the duo's silhouettes against a sea of darkness, and for the briefest moment, everything stilled. In that perfect silence, the father nodded gently to his son, giving him the cue. Marco lifted his microphone with trembling fingers, and together, they opened their mouths to sing. The first soft notes of the instrumental drifted through the vast AGT auditorium like a gentle breeze, creating an atmosphere so still you could hear the faint hum of the stage lights. Arvin and Marco stood shoulder to shoulder at center stage, their microphones lifted, their breaths synchronized. The father's hand briefly squeezed his son's shoulder, a silent reminder that whatever happened next, they were in it together. Then Marco began. A single, pure note slipped from the young boy's lips, delicate, controlled, and impossibly angelic. The audience, caught mid-breath, gasped. It wasn't just a good voice for a child. It was a voice that carried innocence, emotion, and an echo of something painful yet hopeful. Up at the judges' panel, Heidi's eyes widened instantly. "Oh my God," she whispered, barely audible. Sophia's mouth slowly opened, astonishment washing over her face. Howie looked back and forth between the father and son, shaking his head in disbelief. Simon did not move, but his gaze sharpened like a lens focusing on something extraordinary. Marco continued, hitting notes many adult singers struggle with. But what captivated everyone even more was the vulnerability in his voice, as if every syllable carried pieces of his small but powerful heart. After a few lines, Arvin joined in. His voice was the perfect contrast to his son's, deep, warm, steady, the kind of voice you hear in dim cafes or late-night serenades. His tone wrapped around Marco's like a shield, giving the performance depth and dimension. The harmony between them was so natural, so intimate, that it felt as though the audience wasn't just witnessing a song, but a conversation. A father guiding his child, a child lifting his father. Whispers spread through the crowd. "Oh my God, they're incredible. That harmony, wow, they sound like one voice." The camera shifted to the audience. People were already tearing up, caught off guard by the raw emotional connection between the two performers. Back on stage, as the chorus swelled, Marco's confidence grew. He stepped slightly forward, pouring his heart into the melody. His small fingers unclenched, and he began to gesture softly with his free hand. The shy child from moments ago now transformed into a storyteller. Arvin watched him proudly, his eyes reflecting both awe and something deeper, a history of struggle, sacrifice, and nights spent dreaming of a moment like this. Midway through the song, the father took a solo line, one that carried a hint of pain. His voice cracked ever so slightly, not from lack of control, but from overwhelming emotion. The audience reacted instantly. Some gasped, others clutched their chests. Marco glanced at his dad, sensing the shift. Without hesitation, he reached out, gently touching his father's arm. It was a tiny gesture, almost unnoticeable, but the cameras caught it perfectly. That single touch sparked an emotional explosion across the room. Sophia pressed a hand to her heart. Heidi leaned forward, eyes glistening. Even Simon's jaw tightened, his usually impenetrable expression slipping for a fraction of a second. As the music rose toward the bridge, their voices came together again, this time stronger, fuller, richer. Marco hit an unexpectedly high note, pure and sustained. The entire crowd erupted into a wave of cheers mid-song, a rare occurrence on AGT. Lights in the balcony flickered as dozens of phone flashlights went up, creating a constellation of twinkling stars above the father and son. The glow washed over them like a blessing, highlighting the emotion in their eyes. The energy in the room shifted from admiration to awe. The boy stepped back slightly, allowing his father to take the lead again. Arvin, moved beyond measure, sang with everything he had. His voice trembled at the edges, but instead of weakening the performance, it made it breathtakingly real. You could feel years of stories in his tone, years of sacrifices, years of fathers working for their children, years of dreams paused and dreams reignited through the eyes of a young boy. As Arvin finished his line, Marco looked up at him again, and this time the father gave a tiny nod, granting the boy permission to soar. Marco inhaled deeply and launched into the climactic high note of the song. It wasn't just strong, it was powerful enough to silence every whisper, every movement in the theater. His voice carried an emotional resonance beyond his age, vibrating through the room and striking every heart like lightning. People rose to their feet, unable to stay seated, a standing ovation mid-performance. Even Simon stood up. Slowly, deliberately, his eyes locked on the boy with undeniable admiration. Marco held the note longer than anyone expected, and when he finally let it fall, the softness that followed was like a feather landing in the center of the stage. In the last line, their voices blended again, father and son arm-brushing arms singing as one, their eyes closed, faces lifted slightly toward the warm glow of the stage lights. When the final note dissolved into silence, it felt like the whole theater forgot to breathe. 1 second, 2 seconds, a stillness so profound it felt sacred. And then, the room exploded. A thunderous roar of applause surged through the auditorium. Audience members clapped above their heads, screamed, cried, hugged one another. Some judges pounded the desk in excitement. Others simply stared, blown away by what they had just witnessed. Marco covered his face, overwhelmed. Arvin bent down, wrapping his arms around his son, pulling him into a tight embrace. The boy sobbed softly into his father's shoulder. The father's eyes glistened too, though he tried to blink the tears away. The crowd didn't stop cheering. The entire AGT theater had been melted, not by spectacle or theatrics, but by love, talent, and a bond so genuine the world couldn't help but feel it. And Simon Cowell, he was still standing, and that could only mean one thing. The roar of the crowd thundered across the theater, echoing off the high ceilings of the AGT stage like a wave that refused to settle. People were on their feet, clapping until their palms stung. Some wiped their eyes, others simply stood frozen in awe, unable to process the performance they had just witnessed. On stage, amid the storm of applause, Arvin knelt down in front of Marco, holding the trembling boy firmly by the shoulders. "You did it," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Marco couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his cheeks in silent rivers, his small chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. Arvin pulled him in, wrapping his son in a tight embrace as the audience continued to roar. The father's own eyes glimmered with tears, though he tried to keep his expression composed. He kissed the top of his son's head, holding him like he never wanted to let go. The judges were just as overwhelmed. Heidi Klum had her hands pressed against her mouth, visibly shaken. Sophia blinked several times, swallowing hard, her voice trembling as she said softly to Howie, that was unbelievable. Howie nodded, still staring at the stage with wide eyes. "One of the best moments we've ever had," he murmured. But all attention slowly shifted toward the one judge who hadn't spoken, who hadn't reacted in any typical AGT way. Simon Cowell. He remained standing, tall, still, and glowing under the bright overhead lights. His arms hung loosely at his sides, but his posture carried a weight, a significance. His expression was not the usual stern or calculating look. His eyes glistened, soft but intense, locked completely on the father and son who were still embracing center stage. The audience sensed it. The judges sensed it. Even the hosts backstage sensed it. Something was about to happen. Simon inhaled deeply, as if gathering the right words, the right emotions, the right decision, one that would echo across the AGT stage forever. He stepped forward and leaned into his microphone. "Arvin, Marco," he began, his voice gentler than anyone had expected. The crowd quieted instantly. Even the father and son slowly pulled apart, looking through teary eyes toward the judges' panel. Marco wiped his face with his sleeve, trying to steady himself. Simon continued, "What you just did." He paused, pressing his lips together as though the right phrase refused to come. It wasn't just a performance. It wasn't just a song. It was love, pure love. The audience erupted into soft cheers, moved by his words. He looked down briefly before looking back up. You reminded me, all of us, why music matters, why this show matters, why we do what we do. Arvin placed a protective hand on Marco's back, gently rubbing circles to calm him. Simon's voice strengthened, and to see a father and son, sharing a dream, sharing a stage, supporting each other. He shook his head, smiling now, but it was a small, emotional smile rarely seen from him. It may be one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed in all my years doing this. People in the audience gasped. Some clutched their hearts. Others whispered, "He's gonna do it." Simon stepped away from the microphone, and that single movement felt like lightning striking the room. He stood up straighter. He slid his chair back. He placed both hands on the desk. The crowd began to scream. Arvin froze. Marco's eyes widened, his breath catching. Sophia reached for Heidi's arm. Howie grinned, already knowing what was coming. Simon lifted his hand. The noise in the theater crescendoed like a tidal wave crashing onto shore. He slammed the golden buzzer. In an instant, a brilliant burst of golden light erupted from the ceiling. The familiar, magical sound effect echoed across the theater as streams of shimmering gold confetti exploded downward like a glittering waterfall. The father and son looked up in shock. Marco covered his mouth with both hands, falling to his knees as the rain of gold surrounded him. Arvin immediately knelt beside him, pulling his son into a tight, trembling embrace as confetti stuck to their clothes, their hair, their tears. The theater exploded with celebration, louder than before, louder than most golden buzzer moments. People jumped up and down. Some screamed names. Others waved their arms wildly beneath the swirling gold. Sophia shouted, "Yes, yes," while clapping above her head. Heidi was in full tears now, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. Howie simply looked stunned, laughter mixing with awe. And Simon stepped out from behind the panel and walked onto the stage, a gesture he reserved only for performers he truly felt connected to. As he approached, the confetti continued to fall. Marco looked up at him through watery eyes, overwhelmed, starstruck. Simon knelt in front of them both, placing a gentle hand on Marco's shoulder. "You're incredible," he said softly, bending down to meet the boy at eye level. "And your dad, he's incredible too. Keep singing together. Never stop singing together." Marco threw his arms around Simon, hugging him tightly, a moment so pure that the audience collectively melted once more. Simon hugged him back without hesitation, patting his back with genuine warmth. Arvin extended a hand, voice breaking as he whispered, "Thank you. Thank you so much." Simon shook his head. "No," he replied, "thank you." He then placed both hands on Arvin's shoulders, steadying him as if grounding him in this life-changing moment. "This is just the beginning for you two," he said with a calm certainty. Golden confetti continued to rain down like blessings, catching the light as it sparkled around them. The entire stage felt magical, transformed into a scene straight from a fairy tale. The father and son clung to one another, tears flowing freely, not out of sadness, but out of pure, overwhelming joy. Backstage, the hosts shouted excitedly into the cameras, "Simon hit the golden buzzer. This father-son duo from Manila just made AGT history." The applause went on, refusing to fade. And there, at the center of the golden storm, stood a father and son, once just dreamers from Manila, now forever etched into the heart of America's Got Talent. A family dream finally realized, a bond celebrated, a moment the world would never forget.